any strong power structure must find a way to integrate its opponents to prosper. Capitalism is a good example. And by prospering, I mean prospering for at least a longer amount of time than otherwise. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert D. Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. In this video I wish to talk about the self-defense mechanisms of power systems. In particular capitalism, but not only. Maybe I'll make the title about capitalism to lure all the lefties in here, okay? So please forgive me if I do that. So imagine you're a power system, like a hierarchy or a network or some sort of hybrid of both. And I'll actually give you, below, I'll give you examples from politics, religion, economics, again, capitalism, for example, science, and maybe we'll talk about art, but unlikely, but maybe I'll make a comment about this in the comments again. So watch out. So if you were this sort of power system in any of those areas, how do you preserve yourself? How do you defend yourself? How do you survive, you might ask? So obviously you will have some sort of competitors, because again, there are plenty of ideas in all of these areas. Again, as Nietzsche said, any political party, well, he was talking about political parties, but it relates to any power structure, actually. So if there's a strong political party anywhere, a power structure, I might say, anywhere, there will always be a competitor to it, however small, but there always will be. That's kind of the point. So in order for the big guy to survive, he must somehow deal with the smaller guy, even though maybe the smaller guy is actually equally big. Forgive me for this oxymoron. Anyways, in society, you rarely can actually destroy your competitor. And actually, sometimes it's I would say most of the time, it's harmful to destroy your competitor, right? So, well, in today's society, you can't even do that directly, at least. So here we face the famous principle of if you can't beat them, join them, right? Or in the Russian iteration of it, if you can't beat it, you should lead it, right? So what you should try to do, and this is of course a value statement, a moralistic statement, you should try to integrate this enemy, this competitor, at least partially, into your own domain, essentially, into your own system. And here, blank for all the cool aphorisms about how turning your enemy into your friend is cool. Obviously, I won't even be looking for those. It's kind of boring, to be honest. But yeah, turning your enemy into your friend, believe it or not, is much better than fighting your enemy even, right? And all the successful examples of power structures have this trait. They are able to somehow reintegrate, I don't know the other word, the competitor into their own domain, kind of make it almost like their slave, but at least their ally, something like that. And again, I have plenty of examples for you, so let's consider them. Religion, okay, so what was the most, the strongest religious system we have? Okay, maybe that's a strong statement. Well, a very strong religious system of a faraway past. It was polytheism, specifically Roman polytheism, okay? Maybe some other polytheisms as well, but Roman was a very, very fine example of what I want to talk about, where Rome was so tolerant to, if you wish, competitor gods. I mean, Zeus was kind of the main god, not the Zeus, but Jupiter. Well, Zeus kind of. But there were other Roman gods and even Greek gods, etc. Not only that, but even the other gods from other cultures were also cherished and not cherished, but more acknowledged at least. Okay, you can you can have your gods if you wish. And at some point, Rome even established a whole building for this purpose, right? The temple of all gods, pantheon, which literally means all the gods, right? It's devoted to all the gods. So, okay, you don't like our Roman gods, well, here's pantheon, and you haven't found here any of your temples, well, here's pantheon. Come on, I mean, it's perfectly fine. We have nothing against this. So it was a very powerful system. Why? Well, exactly because it had a way of dealing with any sort of opposition, right? Any sort of opposing theistic system. So theoretically, even Christians could have attended Pantheon, I assume, right? Even though, I mean, a Christian God kind of forbids them from doing that. It's the Christianity that's the limiting system here. So you might ask, well, how did Christianity defeat Roman monotheism then? And it's a great question. So firstly, I refer you to my video about the origins of gods. See the link in the description. And secondly, I refer you to my video about Christianity specifically. Again, I will link it as well. So where I say that Christianity is actually not limiting at all. It's almost like there is no God, almost like, right? You cannot hear about Muslim atheists, right? Or Jewish atheists. Somehow all the atheists pretty much are Christian, right? Well, maybe Buddhist, you might say, but Buddhism is not even a religion in the sense of that they have any gods in the first place. If you have a God, you can't really become an atheist unless you are Christian. So Christianity is almost like atheism in the first place, like a beta version. So in Christianity, as I've said in my video about it, you can pretty much do whatever you want, really, and God will still love you. Like, the only thing you need to do is, even if you are like the follower of other religion, technically, you can convert at any time. Maybe it's not even necessary. Like, the only real thing you need to do is, like, when you are almost dead, let's put it this way, like when you're dying, you just confess and repent for your sins, and then we're Gucci. Like, Christianity basically considers you a good person, right? So that's why Christianity also has arguably even a more powerful tool of integration of people into, even though it's technically monotheistic, so supposedly it's like more limiting than the Roman polytheism, but not really, as you can see, okay? Alright, so examples from politics, as I've promised. Democracy, right? Arguably the strongest political system. So, well, obviously, I mean, watch my video about Prigozhin's mutiny, the Wagner's mutiny, where I spill a little bit of beans about the actual way the governance works, where you have to also have the monarchistic and aristocratic branch, right? But still, like, in a vacuum, let's assume it's still a democracy, okay? So parliamentarism is a great tool for integration of any opposition into the dialogue. And you will never degenerate into a totalitarian dictatorship with a well-functioning parliament. Okay, maybe never is a bit of an overreach, okay, maybe it's an exaggeration, but let's say your chances of degenerating into a totalitarian regime would be much less if you have a well-oiled, well-working parliamentary machine. So people will just not allow it. Like, if your party wants to come to power, well, it has to compete against 10 other parties, right? So it would be pretty hard unless you have some sort of outside resource which overwhelms the parliament system in itself, like completely, right? Like you're a military dictator or something like that. Well, how did it happen in the first place is also a good question, because military forces would never get as much power as they need to get to perform a coup if parliament is working properly in the first place, right? So yeah, good question. It happened historically, as Russian people love to say. Like, it's historically, how do you call it? Well, basically for historical reasons, right? Something like that. And very symbolic in this respect that, you know, in the famous Austrian painter, when he started his repressions in 1933 in Germany, what started these repressions? Well, it was the Reichstag fire, right? Reichstagsbrand. So they've literally burned the parliament and started the repressions because, well, it's symbolic because it says, well, we have no more dialogue, guys. It's only one party right now. Okay, so forget about this pluralism and stuff and liberalism. So yeah, if you have no political dialogue, it basically means you're in big trouble, long term especially. That's kind of the worst part of it, that it actually lingers for decades, if not like half a century or even more. again, see all the previous totalitarian regimes, how much of a trouble they have to heal themselves, so to speak. Like, look at, again, post-USSR, many good examples, like Hussein or Gaddafi, more recent examples, right? Where they've basically left a scorched earth instead of their political systems, instead of their, like, pluralism again. What kind of pluralism are we talking about under Gaddafi? So it radicalized, obviously, all the opposition. So well, are we very surprised that we have all these kinds of extremists appearing in Libya and Iraq afterwards? I'm not. I mean, it was obvious, it was plain as day that it's going to happen. Because again, the preceding lack of pluralism, that's what causes the further extremism, right? Not the stability, like our Gaddafi and Hussein were so good because they provided stability. No, they just kind of burnt everything, right? And the pain only appeared afterwards when we kind of awakened from our slumber, something to that effect. Yeah, so obviously economics, right? Capitalism. So there's a really, really great term called recuperation. You might get a synonym as like normalization. This is kind of the same thing. So what does recuperation means? Well, it means that capitalism has a way of dealing with its opposition by essentially turning it into a capitalism enterprise or something to that effect. So, anti-capitalism sells pretty good. That's what I'm talking about, right? So if you're like a public persona, like let's say an artist or whatever, entrepreneur even, and you speak out all the anti-capitalistic slogans and, you market yourself as anti-capitalist, you would sell stuff better. That's kind of the main point, right? It's kind of what we're talking about here. So this is what's called recuperation. So, yeah, and it has been examined on cases like, well, okay, it's not exactly capitalism, but there are many examples. Like punk rock was was recuperated by capitalism, but again, it's kind of a lie. It was actually, from the get-go, it was designed to be a capitalistic kind of a, how do you call it? Well, swindle. They literally called their album Swindle, right? It's a trick, right? You think they're anti-capitalism, but they were designed by their producer to sell better, right? So this is what I'm talking about, right? You're against capitalism, well, buy my Che Guevara t-shirts, right? Or something like that. It's pretty good, actually. Like, I wonder how much money does Das Kapital, sellers make on this book of, Karl Marx. Probably not much, because it's a stupid book and it's very big and people don't read that much, but, you know what I mean. Like, it's pretty good, in this respect. So that's how capitalism survives. It's because it has the tools. It's in some sense, like the ultimate system. Well, at least for now, right? Because it can, just as a Christian church, it can accommodate everyone. Like capitalism can accommodate everyone. Like you do whatever you wish. You just have to have money, by some means, right? Okay. Some neighboring examples between, let's say, politics and economics, would be, for example, the religion, and religion, by the way, like religion, slash politics slash economics, yeah. The Church of Social Democracy, right? So we've had this, roughly speaking, capitalistic world, and we've had, roughly speaking, socialistic world. So capitalistic world started, again, incorporating elements of communism. Well, communism, like in thick air quotes. It's not a societal form, communism. It's a principle, as the Marx himself said. Anyways, so what does social democracy did? Again, it integrated elements of socialistic economy into the capitalistic economy, and therefore capitalistic economy didn't need to crumble anymore. It wasn't really as strongly opposed by communistic economy. There's no such thing as, again, I digress again, once more. You get the idea, right? And there were jokes about this, how, like, supposedly capitalistic countries live much better than supposedly socialistic countries, even in the sense of, like social standards. like retirement wages, or you know, like work leaves and things like that, you know. So yeah, that's what happens. Another similar example from politics slash economics would be drug trade, and arguably, you know, similar related things like prostitution, human trafficking, like arms trade, all the good stuff, you know. So they're under the control of the governments, right? By the police and intelligence agencies. So, well, I mean, on the local scale, it's obviously controlled by like just the local police, but internationally, it's obviously controlled by intelligence agencies. So, yeah, that's also a way of integrating this vice, if you wish, this you know, rogue element of economy slash social dynamics slash politics into the existing economy slash politics slash social dynamics. So yeah, the police and intelligence services do so, and same with cryptocurrencies. By the way, watch my Patreon short video about Bitcoin, how intelligence services created it and are still controlling it. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is science. Okay, so where can we see similar things in science? Well, modern science, like whatever you may think about it, is extremely strong, even now when it's already dead, as I've said in many of my previous videos. So its main tool of recuperation, we can already use this term, of this self-defense by integration, if you wish, is to turn problems into discoveries. So imagine you have a theory that says, well, XYZ should happen, then I don't know, alpha, beta, gamma happens instead in a certain experiment. Well, modern science says, okay, XYZ should happen except when alpha, beta, gamma happens. And that's it. Like, the problem is solved, right? So we've integrated it. Like, it's not a theory-destroying argument anymore. It's integrated into the theory, right? And there have been many examples of that. Actually, like, some theories start from this. Some theories just plainly unite this. Like, again, an example I really love of like Niels Bohr was one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, was very famous for this sort of formalism, if you wish. Like, for example, what is wave-particle duality, right? It basically, for any sane person, it means that both wave and a particle are unapplicable concepts, or something third should emerge, right? Whereas Bohr said, okay, well, if this is unapplicable in these cases, but this is unapplicable in these cases, let's just postulate that this is unapplicable in these cases and this is unapplicable in these cases. So we essentially turn an argument against our theory into a postulate of our theory. You know, you see the beauty of it? It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's this famous approach. Then we have theories like general relativity, which produce many artifacts such as black holes or expansion of the universe, you know, Friedman's solution to Einstein's equations. But we also call it not a bug but a feature. It's not that we've discovered there are black holes, or I'm sorry, it's not that we've actually disproven general relativity because it produces infinities, aka black holes. It's more like we've discovered like black holes, like in reality. Oh my God, look at us. So yeah, watch my video Beyond the Border, a very old video where I argue that when you use a theory beyond its natural boundary, so to speak, where it's actually applicable according to its own axioms, well, you arrive at stupid conclusions such as these, like black holes, for example, right? Or a Big Bang. So yeah. So, but again, modern science tends to turn these artifacts that should have actually destroyed the theory that produces them, it prefers to turn them into discoveries and actually reify them, make them actual objects, you know? Yeah. And in particle physics, there are plenty of examples like that where, well, I'm not sure how well aware you are of like the development of strong interaction physics, but there have been, for example, like when people started colliding, roughly speaking, protons, right? So what they've seen rather is like what we usually measure is so-called cross-section of interaction. This is roughly speaking how many particles do we see as a result, because there's all kinds of stuff flying out of the area of interaction, right? So we just kind of count how much of the stuff is flying out. And usually you build this graph like energy of the interaction, like how much energy does the colliding protons have versus like how much stuff is flying out. And we see like, okay, we raise the energy, there's like roughly a flat line. Well, maybe it's dropping a little bit, maybe it's climbing a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Let's just say it's flat, but then at some energy there's a sudden huge peak, but then it falls again, and then it's almost flat again, then it maybe rises again, etc., etc. So what people did, well, firstly, they were called resonances, right? Well, because obviously, right? Like you tweak the frequency, nothing happens, but then, whoo, suddenly like a huge kind of like resonance occurs, okay? But then people say, well, what if these resonances actually correspond to particles? Like the new particle has finally enough energy to be born, right? And then it gets born, and that's what increases the amount of stuff that's flying out. It's whatever this new particle decays into, that's what's flying out. So this new bunch, right? So these new particles were literally called resonances. And that's kind of one of the reasons why the particle zoo appeared, etc., etc. But you can see, right? We don't have a theory of why the hell would there be a resonance in terms of like the amount of stuff that's flying out? But instead of having a theory of why that is the case, we just insert a new particle and say that, well, okay, it's a new particle that decays into all of this crap. That's what causes this resonance. I mean, in itself, it doesn't look very suspicious, but considering the context I've given you, right? It looks kind of suspicious because it's exactly the same method, right? It's not a bug, it's a feature kind of method. Like, we see something mysterious, we just say, okay, we've discovered a new particle. It's not like our old theories are garbage, maybe we review them. No, we've discovered a new particle. So our old theories are fine, except when this new particle reacts. Then we add it, and then it's perfectly fine again. Okay, so hopefully you can see the point of this video. So let's just conclude with this. Like I really, okay, never mind. What I wanted to say is like, I have this problem of camera focus, so I'm very like afraid of doing anything with my hands because it seems to disrupt it. It would be very ironic if I just disrupted it, or maybe I fixed it. Like, I don't know, I don't see my screen, like what is being recorded right now. So, conclusions, right? So my point would be that, like, what have we talked about in this video? Well, actually, I've given you just a bunch of examples of a general principle, right? And what is the general principle? Well, it's that any strong power structure must find a way to integrate its opponents to prosper. Capitalism is a good example. And by prospering, I mean prospering for at least a longer amount of time than otherwise. Okay, so we have no guarantees of like infinite prosperity, temporally speaking, but at least we can prolong our lifetime if we have methods in order to, again, ally ourselves with our opponents, if you wish, like a little bit of a, not pathetic, like, emotionally charged description, let's put it this way. But yeah, anyways, it's the best recipe for the self-defense of strong power structures that we have. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing. If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.